What happens when both teams' last Pokemon faint? Long story short, the last mon to faint will be declared the winner. But there are a lot of different scenarios both Pokemon can faint in the same turn with varying results. Today we will walk through scenarios where both Pokemon faint in the same turn and who would be declared winner. From self-destruction moves to Destiny Bond, Perish Song, and more. Explosion theme teams are pretty funny to see. This gimmick is primarily used on pro trolling teams where you have 6 mons using moves that blast them to ashes. The problem is, you can't really get wins with this team, unless you're playing someone else using the same strategy. This is because explosion based moves will cause a user to faint first before the target would. This in turn will cause you to lose the game in a 1v1 scenario due to you being at a Pokemon first. Both mons will indeed faint though, creating a clear battlefield. Speed doesn't matter in this scenario as the Kamikaze mon will always faint first. But if you're playing in a draft league, I guess you'll have a 0 for differential that match. So while you might get the KO with your Explosion mon, you won't get the dub. The next scenario we're going to cover is Life Orb Recoil. If you take your opponent's last mon out and then feint the Life Orb Recoil, you will still win the match, which makes sense. This is because the damage of the attack happens before the Life Orb Recoil. So in this scenario, you will still feint at the end of the turn, but the mon taking the attack will feint first, declaring them the big loser.
You're a loser!
If 2 Pokemon are both vulnerable to Sandstorm damage and Hail prior to the change to Snow, the faster Pokemon will take the chip first. This is good for scouting EVs, natures, and potential scarfs by the way. But in a scenario where both teams' last mons are in a Sandstorm at very low HP, they will both go down. But the slower mon will take the damage second, causing it to faint last and becoming victor. No, not that victor. But what about scenarios where both mons are statused and would go down the same turn? Well, this one is pretty interesting. If 2 Pokemon are statused, the faster one will always take damage first. So in the scenario, say you have the 2 last Pokemon going down to Toxic on the same turn, the fastest one will faint first, and the slower one will be the winner. The interesting part is, unlike the Sandstorm scenario, the slower Pokemon won't take that last turn of damage, as the battle will end first. This means it won't even feint to result in an empty battlefield, like the other scenarios. An interesting twist to this is that even though the faster mons will faint first if taking the same passive damage, this doesn't apply to different forms of passive damage. I'm planning on doing a follow-up video covering the order of all passive damage possible. But in these scenarios, both Pokemon will not faint, as the next form of passive damage won't occur before the first Pokemon faints. This is seen here with Salt Cure activating on the much faster Froslass after Toxic damages Shuckle. Triple kick that like button if you'd like to see every form of passive damage shown in order, and I'll try to get them all. Plus I'll have as many of them going at once on a single mon. I'm going to get the Perish Song and Destiny Bond soon, but first I want to cover a handful of abilities that deal damage depending on certain circumstances. The ability Innards Out is exclusive to Pyukumuku. If the Puke is KO'd by an attacking move, the user will take the damage equivalent to the amount of HP Pyukumuku had before it went down. So if you have your last mon out against your opponent's last mon being Innards Out Pyukumuku, what happens when you KO it with an attack? Well, in the scenario Pyukumuku has enough HP to KO you back, this will cause both Pokemon to faint. But Pyukumuku will always faint first, so speed doesn't matter as a faster and slower mon will always faint second. This is true for all the abilities I tested. Liquid Ooze is an ability that causes draining moves used against the Oozer to deal damage instead of healing. So if you use Giga Drain on a Tentacruel with this ability, you would lose health instead of gaining it. In the scenario where there is 1 mon left on each side, and the Liquid Oozer gets taken out by a draining move, if the ooze damage is great enough to drain the attacker's HP to 0, both mons will faint. However, just like Innards Out, this is not a way to get a win from your ability. The Liquid Ooze user will faint first, and the attacking mon will win. A similar style ability, Aftermath, shares these traits. When knocked out by a contact move, the attacking mon will take 1/4 of its max HP and damage. This isn't the most unlikely scenario to occur, so if you are banking on using Aftermath to get you a win, think again. The Aftermath user will faint first and bring down any user making contact if they are under 1/4 of their max HP. So make sure you have at least 1 mon in the back if you want to grab a win from sacking off your Skuntank.
I'm dying. Help me.
On to Destiny Bond, a move specifically designed for this video I feel. Destiny Bond is a move that makes it if an opponent knocks you out before your next move, they will also be knocked out. It is a good tool to use to knock out an annoying Pokemon that is too bulky or sweeping your squad, and a nice tool in general on fast support mons to trade KOs. But what if you use Destiny Bond with your last mon against your opponent's last mon? Well, Destiny Bond will succeed in bringing the attacker down with you, but it will also bring the L with you. This means you can clear the battlefield, but you will always lose in this scenario as the Destiny Bond user faints first. This is a prerequisite for the move to work, so this one definitely makes sense to work this way. One of the most common scenarios you would see both mons go down is through recoil damage. In the scenario you knock out your opponent's last mon with a recoil move, and your last mon goes down in the process, you will be at ease, as the attacking mon will always be the winner in this scenario. The opposing Pokemon will faint first, and then the move's recoil will come into effect after. This still causes both mons to faint, but unlike explosion moves, the attacker will win this time. A similar scenario is caused when you knock out a Pokemon with a contact move that triggers the abilities Iron Barbs and Rough Skin. The attacking mon using a contact move will take the damage and still faint in this scenario, but only after knocking out the opponent. This means you can't just use these abilities as a way to win a 1 versus 1, so pack Endure to rack up that damage. The same can be said about damaging held items. The Rocky Helmet will have the same effect as Rough Skin and Iron Barbs, along with the Roap and Jabaka Berry, which deal damage based on being hit with a physical or special attack. Trapping moves do passive damage 1/8 of the trap Pokemon's max HP at the end of each turn. In this scenario, the faster Pokemon will always be hurt by the trapping effects first. So this is another case of it actually paying off to be slower. And the turn of trapping won't happen if the last Pokemon on the other team faints, therefore not leaving an empty battlefield. Looking at a move like Final Gambit in action, we can see that it has the same properties as the explosion moves in this scenario. The user will attack and KO itself, fainting before the other Pokemon. Speed doesn't matter here, as the attacking Pokemon will always faint first. Entry hazards are another common way two Pokemon could be KO'd, as they come in as the last mons for each side. In this scenario, it once again proves better to be slow. The faster mon will take hazards and faint before the slower one even takes any damage. So only one mon will faint in this scenario, and the other will still be living it up. And the final scenario I could think of for this video has to do with the move Perish Song. This is not an uncommon move to see on doubles teams, usually with trapping support like Gothitelle. This is a very strategic move, as Perish Song will cause Pokemon faint in order of highest speed stat to lowest. So if you are both on your last 1 or 2 mons in a doubles game, as long as you have the slowest Pokemon on the field, and provided you can stall out the free turns, you will end up the winner. The cool thing about this is you can strategize with speed altering moves or the move Trick Room. This reverses turn order, making the slowest Pokemon the fastest and the fastest Pokemon the slowest. So if you don't have the slowest Pokemon on the field, a cheeky Trick Room will turn the tables. This can also be good Perish Song counterplay, and I'm sure it's come up somewhere before. Of course, with Trick Room, most of these other scenarios can be influenced as well, as long as they are based on speed. So those are the scenarios where both mons would faint at the same time and who would win. If you enjoyed this quick video, make sure to hit that sub button, and I won't blast your ears with music like I did in the last video. Also join the Bud Zone Discord, as we will be hosting our October tournament later in the month. Thanks for watching, buds, and I'll see you in the next one.